What are we doing when they get to the booth? What kind of conversation are we having with them? How do we identify between a good lead and a bad lead, and where are we trying to drive them to? To me, it was a really good example. And I know from looking at the booth and knowing the space and whether they owned the booth or not, they spent hard costs, $100-something thousand just to be there. Welcome to Event Marketing Redefined. As always, thanks for being here on our live show. Greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. We're going to give you the best hour we can possibly give you. Today, I have Jody Hall and Michelle Khair with me, both who I absolutely love, both who came to our event this year, both extremely talented. And I think this is a great topic to touch on, A, because it's a trending topic, and B, because I think they're both spectacular at it. So Jody, Michelle, thank you both for doing this. Thanks for being here today. So first and foremost, let's just break down what we're going to talk about a little bit today. We're going to talk about personalization at events, right? It is a topic that's kind of coming more popular. It's kind of gaining steam. I know we think we've all done a lot of personalization, but it is something that I think is becoming ever so more important. I wrote down like 3 things that kind of like I think about personally when I think about personalization. And like the 3 words I came to was experience, curated, and intentional. And I just think that a lot of what we're talking with personalization is like not putting somebody's name on something, although that's a small detail. That's good and great, but I think that's kind of the basic of what we've seen in the past. But when we're talking about personalization, it is really gearing the event, the activation, and what you are doing towards the audience, really making them feel like they're a part of a community, like they're seen, like they're heard, like they're special, like they're standing out. And I think it's just such a pivotal piece for brands as they're doing events to make people feel that way. Because at the end of the day, and I always say this, like B2B, sure, but like we're all humans. We all have emotions. We're all subjective to a degree. We want to work with brands and people that we know, like, and trust. Right. So I think that's where personalization becomes so important. So let's kind of kick this off and get this conversation going. So Jody and Michelle, I'm going to kind of ask you both this, but what does real personalization mean to you? Right. And again, beyond kind of like name on a badge or like, some of the things we mentioned earlier, but, to each of you, Jody, why don't you go first? But what is real personalization mean at events?
Sure. So first, I just want to mention customization can often get confused with personalization, right? Customization is when you give somebody a couple of options and they get to pick. They get to customize it, right? They get to pick the color, the size of the swag, whatever the case may be. Personalization then takes it like that step further. So similar to how you were thinking about it, Matt, it's those event experiences that are uniquely tailored to an individual, typically using data, preferences, and their behavior. So it's how you curate those experiences that are really unique to individuals, where you can more so tap into allowing the event itself to pick that, choose your own adventure type of thing, where you've got AI driving those agendas, and you've got that are based on your profile, your title, or your company name, those type of experiences where AI or some other event experience is really driving how that person gets to experience that event.
Love that. I love you kind of talking about data driving the personalization, right? Because I think sometimes, obviously, the closer you are to your customer, the closer you are to knowing the people coming to your event, the more you can personalize. But when you're not that close to it, or you're just starting events, or you have larger audiences, it's different, right? It's like, if I'm going to throw a birthday party for my 5-year-old daughter and her friends, like, we have a pretty good idea what they want to do, right? But when you're a big brand,
Matt?
I don't. My wife does. I don't, at all. It's a great point. But with like the brands and the companies and the bigger sizes, it's really kind of, it's how are you all using data? What are you all looking at per se? How are you diving into that audience per se and trying to understand them?
So I look at personalization as basically leaving your fingerprint on their memory. If it doesn't feel designed for them, and then if they don't feel that, then they won't take it personal. It's, about truly knowing, like you had mentioned, having them being seen, having them being heard, and really truly knowing, what their challenges are. It's stepping away from, thinking the mindset of thinking like, oh, what do we want to achieve at a show? And more as, how do we want them to feel? and so basically how do you get to that part is by you can utilizing AI, but it's like truly like it's asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Love that.
And like you said, Matt, it's collecting that data where you can. If you're just starting out with a new show with a new set of audience members or attendees, right, you're not going to know all the things about them yet. But that's where you can start now and start collecting that information through questionnaires, through being able to track their, some of their behavior. There are different ways that you can do that, and that's going to help you build on it. So you may not be completely personalized in year one, but the point is to look at this at a journey where you're going to continue to elevate their experience. And Wendy mentioned something in the chat that I'll just jump on because I happen to have it up, about using data to personalize things where it starts to freak people out when they talk about something and it shows up in their ad feed. Do not disagree with you at all, especially given the conversations that I have with multiple community groups. But I think that it's a little bit different when you are going to an event or visiting a booth or some kind of experience like that, where it's just an ever so slight personalization to make you feel like you are welcomed and you're a part of that environment. And you're not just another number or registration ID. There is actually a purpose for you being there. And someone took the time to learn a little bit more about you and actually listen, right? We talked about, Matt just mentioned his daughter. So the next time I see him, I'm going to ask him, hey, what was the last birthday party theme you did? The more I can keep track of that information, then the better relationship Matt and I are going to build going forward. And now it put that on a larger scale with a bunch of attendees where some of that data is going to be flat, but at least you're starting to kind of build that repertoire of things that you can do.
I love that, Jody. I think so. One thing that's coming to mind is like always try to make sure people split things sometimes between qualitative and quantitative, right? So sometimes I think as you get comfortable with an event, as you get comfortable with knowing your customer, your prospects, and these are things that you should just intuitively know. Your sales team should know. Your marketers should know. And I think a lot of times when people are running events, like you have to meet people where they're at. You can't do things that are tone deaf. Too many people do things like, I use this example all the time, and I think I selfishly toot our horn on this, but like when we hosted our event, like even the first year, we didn't give away swag. We didn't give away crap. Because just think about it. We're hosting high-level corporate event marketers. They give away, they've done it all. They've seen all the swag. They've seen all the crap. They've given away all the stuff. We're just going to give them more of it, of things that they've done and seen. It doesn't make any sense. So where that would just be an old playbook, normal routine. Oh, well, we got to give them something. Let's put their name on this. Like, it wouldn't work for them. Whereas it might work for another audience, but for us, it doesn't work for that audience. So that's something I think about quantitative and qualitative. Where I kind of want to steer things now is talking about that personalization, but I love understanding the why. I love understanding what's going on around things, right? So, Jody, Michelle, either of you take this, but like, why do you think personalization is becoming such a priority right now, right? Because I do think there is some steam behind it.
So, in this day and age, you log into your phone and, they know, your phone knows your vibe. Your phone knows exactly where you want to go to. So in the digital world, we have options. And so our attendees, or I can like to consider them when they walk into my space, the booth, our guest, they want us to know what personalization that they want from us. And so they expect that from events, just as much as they expect it in their everyday life.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too, because when you think about it, customization nowadays is the bare minimum. Like that's the expectation. You can't go to an event where an email didn't have your name inserted into the hello Jody type of thing, or, things like that. And that's just the base. So everything continues to elevate with time, right? And so personalization is that next level where if you're going to do it, you've really got to get some really good technology and some good data most of the time, right? There's probably some shortcuts you can take, but a lot of it relies on taking it to that next level. You're elevating that experience from customization, which is now really just expected. Don't just hand me a size large shirt and assume that that's going to fit me, right? To personalization. Let me actually pick the name that I want to put on it. Don't just assume I want my first and last initial, right? So there are some components there that I think the expectation of the attendee is you can really elevate their experience. And to Michelle's point, help them remember your brand if you can actually get to the point where you're personalizing, not just customizing.
Yeah, I like, go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said, Jody. And I was also thinking, like, in the past, we always thought that we're fighting for, competing against other events. No, really, we're competing for people's time. And how, when you personalize, that's how you win. That's how you get them to, like, maybe stop and like, oh, this looks like it's for me, built for me, type of concept.
Competing for people's time, I think, is a great way of phrasing it. And I like kind of where you guys took it, because I do think some of the, with personalization, like everything's being personalized these days. Everything's being curated for people, right? Via the phone, like you said, Michelle, kind of the way things are coming at you. I also think a big piece of this and is like brands have to build rapport. They have to drive pipeline. You have to get people to be interested in who you are. And sometimes that personalization is kind of the lending of the hand, saying like, we're interested in you. Like, we see you. We're not just throwing some blanket campaign at you. And I do think that is the beauty of events. And that is the shift I wrote about this morning, that digital marketing is so saturated right now, and it's changing, and AI is saturating it further. But that's why events are going to have a nice run here. But events have to evolve faster and be more of a channel and get more strategic and more intentional. But that's where I think a lot of the personalization is coming from. Let's talk. We have a question, and I love to take questions because then it encourages them. But questions from Janelle. Janelle said, how do you create an inclusive and personalized event that considers the needs of people with disabilities?
So I'm going to just throw it out there. I mean, let's make sure that you are getting that information in advance. And so when you think about registering people for an event and taking it more kind of an ancillary event in the trade show world, for example, but when you're trying to create an event and you're asking the right questions, not just, what do you need? I saw it once and it was like, what can we do to help you experience this event better? Right. And so it was, someone that may be wheelchair bound wanted to make sure that there were ramps, or someone that was hearing impaired wanted to make sure there was an ASL interpreter with them. So how you formulate your questions and how you ask the question will help you better understand what, depending on the disability that you are, asking about, you'll help you then create that. That then becomes a type of stakeholder for your event. So just like you would tend to those that like to drink alcohol or not drink alcohol, you need to think about, if you're having an event or could have people show up with disabilities that you may not be able to register in advance, you need to think about that full circle and be prepared. But again, it goes back to knowing your audience, knowing your attendees.
That's a great point, Jody. And I was also going to add to, a lot of attendees, we think when you're building your presentations, you want to think a lot of lights, a lot of noise, a lot of sound. And really, there's a big portion of our audience members that it affects them dearly. And so they might have to step away because it's just too much. And so just being considerate that when you're planning your program, not to be all flashy, because not always flashy is better, because not everybody can handle that.
And this is where you create those different ways that you experience the event, right? It doesn't mean that everybody is going to be in the main room where there's a large rock band taking place, right? Make sure you've secured an outside area that is just a lounge area where people can still engage and interact with each other. So thinking about how you can make that experience work. But this all will eventually go back to your intentional design. It's understanding your audience, understanding what their needs are, and then being able to design intentionally for how they're going to experience it.
So, Jody and Michelle, I'll start with you, Jody, on this one. It's basically saying, when you're planning with multiple stakeholders, which goes right into what we're talking about here, right? Attendees, sales, executives, whomever, like, you're kind of working with a lot of different people when you're getting this event going. How do you keep the personalization at an event? How do you make sure that it is curated in the right directions to the right people and you don't lose focus?
Yeah, it's really tough. And I'll kind of go back to some training that I experienced called the Event Canvas methodology by the Event Design Collective. And it just really was a mind shift for me and helped me understand, the attendees or your stakeholders are not just a type of attendee. It could be a multiple different type of attendees that are there, which now means you're trying to design for multiple stakeholders. Well, you can't make everybody happy all the time, right? So you've really got to zone in on those key stakeholders that you need to change their behavior in some way, whether you're trying to teach them something or you want them to walk away feeling differently about your brand or building a relationship with somebody. Once you can understand who your key stakeholders that you're designing for, the other ones will kind of fall into play to some degree, but you have to focus your energy, your attention, your money on those key stakeholders. And then you start designing that experience. So unless you're having one dinner for 2 hours and there's only one type of, food you can serve, you'll have opportunities along the way to design intentionally for each of those different stakeholders. I just mentioned earlier, people that drink and then people that don't drink, but still want to be part of the party and still want to feel like they're having a good time. Make sure that you've addressed that and you've got some really fun mocktails available, or whatever the new term is they're using, right? But think about how you can address each of the different stakeholders, even if it's at different areas or different times of the event itself. Sometimes you got to be careful because when it comes to the food, right, you may have to address everybody at once with different allergies and restrictions. But when you're thinking about their journey, from the moment that you invite them to the follow-up afterwards, make sure you're bringing into vision what their needs, wants, pains, gains are, so that you can personalize each of those interactions accordingly. That helps. So you don't want to lose clarity on your overall objectives, but that's why you need to go through this process, understand what those key objectives are, and then that becomes your North Star. And then every decision after that, do you use this picture? Do you rate it in this tone? Is all about getting to those outcomes that you've established from the beginning of what those objectives are, and then pulling in those attributes of those different stakeholders and really focusing in on what's going to move the needle for them. How are they going to feel included? So that's kind of the long story, how we like
easy to get kind of moved around when you have a lot of people demanding a lot of things.
100%.
And then you also have a lot of people at the event and a lot of different types of people. I love what you're saying. Like, there is a reality to the situation. The reality is you have certain stakeholders that are not necessarily more important, but from the driving of the event and what the event is, they have to take front row. Michelle, how are you building personalized moments into different parts of your event program, right? And like, how are you building for each attendee, their journey? What kind of personalized moments are you building in?
So it starts in the beginning. It starts when they register. Once they register for, like, let's just say they're attending one of our education sessions. Our team starts building basically a personalized campaign towards that person, and it's based around the content that they're choosing to participate in at the event. So it will start with the pre-marketing, a personalized campaign will address like the pain points that address that topic. Maybe if we won't really talk about product, that product that we offer, but maybe solutions to the problems that, the topic that they're interested in solves. From that, I will curate different experiences once, inside the booth, not just having a general demonstration, but basically really personalizing that demonstration based on if they are a lab owner, because my industry is the dental world. And so is it a lab technician? Is it a lab owner? So I basically curate different types of live demos that they can go through that would address their challenges or problems that they might be having, with a certain piece of equipment or technology. From that, I also build, we're going to try something new this year at our next big tier 1 event. We're curating roundtable breakfasts in the morning. So because it's kind of hard to get to them in the evening because you're competing against other, vendors and suppliers. So we thought, let's hit them in the morning where, they're fresh and curate where it's basically personalized based on their role type. And then at the end of the event, I always send to them, curate key highlights, actionable tips that they can use within their lab space. And I also incorporate my survey in that email, but basically making it personalized to the content that they engaged with and not just a general overview of what the event was.
Nice. Jody, what about you? Where are you building personalized moments?
So for us in the trade show world, at least, we're really looking at those opportunities where I would say swag is the easy way to do it. So thinking about those ways that it's not just a water bottle that we distribute, but we're providing like just a slew of stickers that they can use, whether they like sports or traveling. And it gives them an opportunity to personalize their selection of water bottles, whatever that may look like. Plus, it gives us some time to talk to them while they're fishing through all the stickers, right? So there's definitely some intention there. And then there's other moments where we'll have like a variety of items. And once we're talking to the attendee, we can make a selection, right? Or do they talk about how they love coffee? let's move into the coffee mug, let's hand it to them as they leave. Or are they talking about how they're into fitness and wellness? Hey, we've got some fitness bands, let's hand them that swag instead. So instead of them choosing, as we have a conversation, we hope we've done our research in advance about some of the different attributes of these attendees, we can provide a couple different options and actually hand it to them as if we've been listening, because we've asked the right questions in the booth. We did one recently where we had luggage tags that we had stamped or embossed so that they could actually pick. We had the tags, but they could pick what they wanted on the tags, right? And they did it right there on site. We've done things where you can etch in like the bottom of a wine glass, and you have an etcher there on site that can etch whatever that person wants to say on there. I actually attended one the other day where you could pick a piece of clothing and then they embroidered it for you while you wait. And you can't have a whole phrase on there, but it was really super because they could embroider it for you right then and there. So you have this combination of customization and personalization.
I like that. I think some of the choices that I'm seeing people make when it comes to swag and personalization on that side is it's more of like, it's less of what the item is, or it's really more of a cultural thing. Like what's popular, what are they into, what can they grab or take that represents them versus having a branded piece of your company, something. What do they draw to? What resonates with them? Is it a sticker on the back of their laptop? Is it like what is it? Where is their, like, what's the term I'm looking for? Like, where's their identity built in, right? Like there was a guy on LinkedIn, he's a marketer, and he made these hats. I think they said like creative across the top. And people were buying them like crazy because that's a part of people's identity. And it is, that to me is understanding your audience and then meeting them where they are. Meeting them where they are is knowing their identity, what's important to them, what matters to them, what's going on in their world that's relevant, versus you just like force feeding them just bullshit all the time that like you think is cool. So you're just trying to find that in between.
I mean, it gets tricky because you also want to tie in the reason why you're at the event, right? You want it to resonate with them, is then you need to tie in your brand. And is that your brand story? Like, how do you get all of these things tied into one element? And it's not easy. Sometimes we do it well, and sometimes we're just trying to make sure we're memorable and they walk away with something that they're going to hold on to that's going to show up our brand over and over and over again. But the gold standard is to try to connect all those dots for them.
I totally agree with what you're saying, Jody. It's hard when you have, especially when your company represents like different business units and you have different messaging per product line. And it's like, and how do you like speak one message to one person to another and like not be like chaotic in your booth space, but be clear and consistent. But overall, the message is met with everybody. It's really hard, to design that. I feel like I've been trying really hard to like, when going into designing the key messages or, the overall theme vibe, what is the story we're trying to tell? And, and what is the emotion we're trying to create? And then how do we create this motion? By creating these memories, these moments, these little touch points that will stay with somebody, in this chaos of noise that they're basically surrounded in. And when I was thinking about, with the stakeholders question, I was like, it's like you all are part of like one big musical. Everyone has a different rhythm, but it's the same songs. So like we have to keep that North Star so that everyone keeps focused, So that's the way I look at it.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Good way of putting it. What's maybe something either of you have done recently that's like unexpected, creative, like different? Like what have you done maybe that, you could tell a little bit of a story or just explain what you did that might spark some creativity in others who are listening for, what they can do? I
can go with that one.
You're up.
So last year at our biggest tier 1 event, it's in Chicago in February, the best time ever. And so in the past, we had done our big customer party at Harry Carey's, which was a great event. People loved going there. And then we, from COVID, they moved into the product showroom. But last year we took it to Wrigley Field and basically curated an evening with our top customers that they were invited to an evening where they got to have food, drinks, and they got to hit in the batting cages where the Cubs they practice in. I struck out every time, but it doesn't really matter. But what that event did, and I didn't even know it was going to create this moment, was it created this bucket list check off box memory moment. Cool. And when you do that, that creates loyalty, that brings in new business, that just brings in more hype. And it's just like, and I created this experience, like, just wanting to, provide a thank you to our top customers and like how we, appreciate their business. But it did so much more because it was a moment for somebody that they've been always wanting. And so when you can figure out how to do that, now I'm like, well, how can I continue to do this? Create these memories that check off this bucket list, which I wasn't even thinking about, ever trying to like design for. But now it's really been in my game plan of how I'd create those type of experiences as well.
It's a good example. You got anything, Jody?
Not that I can think of offhand. Most of what we've been working on are trade show experiences. So
yeah,
we're a little bit more limited. That's why I mentioned swag at the beginning.
Yeah.
Nothing I don't think that we've done recently that was around specific personalization, like where I could tap into that and say, oh, that was definitely how we personalize it, other than the swag piece.
Yeah. All right. So when we were talking to both of you prior to the show, you both had touched on like usage of AI, right? And kind of using it in different ways. So Michelle, let's start with you. How are you incorporating AI in what you're doing in terms of like helping with personalization, helping to support it?
I'm utilizing AI in many different areas of the event planning process. In that situation, I've been using AI to really scale like the data and like, because you have, when you get all this data from the registration, it's a lot. And AI has been really helping that process move so much quicker. So that leaves me the time for me to strategize. You can't use really AI for empathy. You still need your gut instinct on what somebody how they might truly feel about it, but it definitely helps me scale and analyze the data in a much quicker fashion. I would love to start also incorporating it into the booth space by, for instance, through their badge and RFID scanner, that when they come into the booth, it's going to scan them and it's going to basically notify my team about, their role, what industry, and so that they know, instead of like, okay, maybe this is a lab technician, maybe like, because, you get certain different types of individuals that come into your booth, different types. You have the looky-loos, you have the swag hounds, you have the people who are interested, and really having those talking points for my team. And AI has helped me also build that content, those talking points as well, based on those type of personas, on the type of attendee that comes into the booth.
So what's kind of an example, Michelle? Like are you using ChatGPT? Are you using Grok?
Okay.
What are you inputting? Kind of like, how are you doing it?
So I use ChatGPT and I use Claude, and I really like Perplexity, but my most favorite new tool is Manus AI. That's been a game changer. Not only can you can make agents and schedule tasks within this AI program. So for instance, you get a list from your leads, and then you put the list into the Manus and you ask it to curate a email campaign, all customized, built around the data that you fed it. And then and you can even take it as far as write the email for me. You do have to like then tie in your, email platform that you're utilizing in order for it to do that. But it will basically write the email for you. It won't hit send until you say it's okay, but it's basically taking all the busy work and out of that process.
Nice. I like that. I've used it myself with some of our clients when we're doing, say, have a client doing a trade show. And one of my big questions always that we're trying to uncover is like, tell me exactly who your ICP is and give me as much information on them as you can. And one of the things that I always go into ChatGPT and do is I'll give the information that the client gave. This is the title, this is the person, this is who they are. But I ask ChatGPT all the time, I say, what do they care about in their job, in their role, in their because of this role and because of what they're doing day to day? What do they care about? What matters to them? And I think that is something to me that it's able to pull for you. And it might not all be 100% correct, but to me, it's pulled some really great stuff that helps us then design experiences, deliver ideas, deliver engagement ideas, because everything's framed like we could be as creative and come up with interactive and tech and cool things for everybody. But what does it tie back to? I need it all to tie back to like, hey, you said this is your ICP. This is what matters to them. Like, this is what they're concerned with. So it ties back. So I find that to be a really good use of it.
I also take a step further with also, what are my competitors doing? And you can just straight up ask Chat or Claude, give them a list of your competitors and ask them, what is their digital campaign? How do they present themselves at trade shows? And they will pull the data and research, way in more places than I could ever start looking. And they do it so quickly that I can also see. And I also ask, I always preface after with any AI I'm using is like, what success rate, if they give me a bunch of different options, I'm like, which option is going to be the most successful? And why did you select that choice? And I always, ask that because, they always provide many different, ideas, but some of them are like, okay, I can't really do that. But it's like, okay, let's be for real. Which one's going to be which one's going to actually move that needle? Which one's going to actually hit home? And then, when you ask them to be, why did you choose that? It really helps you understand where they're coming from. The AI, the bot.
The bot. I love how you said the AI. That's amazing. Jody, one of the things I love that you said when we were talking prior about this kind of show and what we want to talk about was you talked about intentional design. I use the term all of the time, like being intentional about what you're doing, because I think events, one of the plagues of it is it's gotten to this point to where event marketers are so busy, companies are underfunding, under-resourcing the department, not the events itself at times. I think the department. And then what then happens is strategy, intentionality go out the window. And I think it's, then you have people yelling and screaming about like ROI and measurement and, oh, we have to produce pipeline. And, sales teams are like, well, there's no leads from this, right? So it's like, I think this idea of being intentional and intentional design, let's just talk a little bit about that and what your philosophy is on it when you're going into a trade show or an event.
Yeah, so really try to take some time at the very beginning to understand, like I mentioned, who the stakeholders are, who the key stakeholders are on top of that, right? Because you've got a lot of people and everything from the budget owner to your sales teams to the attendees, and that could be multiple types of attendees. Figuring out then who the key folks are that are going to really drive some of those decisions that are going to help you reach those objectives. So you've got your stakeholders. Now you're diving into trying to empathize with them. And that's where AI can really come in handy as you start to plug those into AI to kind of grab that information from all different sources to be able to help you understand, okay, if this is the type of audience or attendee I have, what are their pains? What are their gains? What is going through, their challenges with either our product or why are they going to our competitors? So you can really gain some additional information that can help you then figure out why you're showing up at the show or doing the event. So then you've got to establish those objectives. What is that behavior change? And right, this is not about, changing what they're going to, well, maybe if you're a soda company, what kind of soda you're going to drink from day one or day two, but it can be anything from you're trying to change their behavior as to their loyalty to your brand, the knowledge about your brand. If you want them, for us, right, learning about the new tests that we've launched or understanding how we support early development of clinical trials. So whatever that knowledge is, that starts to get built in to those objectives. And these start to become your North Star. So that as you go through the planning process, which can get derailed in a minute, right? You've written them down, they're documented, you're bringing them up during every kind of planning meeting or every time a decision needs to get made. And that's from, like I mentioned, budget allocation to what does the environment look like, decor, lighting. If you're talking about trade show booths, what does the flow of the booth look like? Do you need to set an area for meeting? Do you need to do demos, right? If all of a sudden you've decided that this booth is just about lead gen, and all of a sudden someone says, well, we need some furniture. Well, why? Well, we want to meet with people. Well, since when? Like long-term meetings. What we've always wanted to, well, you didn't mention it, right? We've gone down this whole path and now we're completely derailed. So really identifying those objectives from the beginning, using that as your North Star, your decision-making process to understand everything along the way from how you're telling your story to what that experience journey is for that attendee is going to get you to the end and is hopefully, if you're doing it right, is going to get you the outcomes that you need. So I think it's just really, the word intentional is really all wrapped up in it, is not allowing the process to get derailed by, oh, but we really like pretzels for the appetizer. Okay, but why is that going to be important? How is that going to get it? It sounds menial, but at the end of the day, if you're wasting your money on something that is not helping them to feel included or helping them to bring the theme to life or your story to life, it's not going to help you get to the end the way you want to get there, then you need to pivot and think of a new way that you can achieve those outcomes, achieve that behavior change, but just in a different way.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of skipping steps in our industry when it comes to this stuff. And so like two things I thought about when you were talking was, one, I've told this story before. Years ago, I went down to HIMSS, big conference, right? It's skipped around a little bit, but it was when it was in Orlando pretty consistently. And I was walking the floor. We had a couple clients in there, and I saw a friend of mine that I know. They had a booth. We did not do it. I went over there. I was hanging out with her and talking to her. And I mean, I was in and around that booth and the show floor for probably 2-3 hours, popped in and out, talked to them for a while. They had a trade show booth, and it had 2 demo stands and a meeting room. It was a 20 by 20 booth, a 400 square foot booth, 2 demo stands and a meeting room. I saw the demo stand used once, and I thought the meeting room not used one time. So I remember asking at some point, I'm like, well, why is that? And then one of the guys like, well, we've always used this booth. We've had it for a while. And it's like, why even, that is such skipping steps and such a burn of money because you're not set up for success. I guarantee they never had the conversation of like, who's the ICP? What are we doing when they get to the booth? What kind of conversation are we having with them? How do we identify between a good lead and a bad lead? And where are we trying to drive them to? And it is just to me, it was a really good example. And I know from looking at the booth and knowing the space and whether they owned a booth or not, they spent hard costs, $100,000 just to be there like that.
Right.
And like, I would love to just call the CFO and be like, that's the biggest piss of money I've ever seen in my entire life. But like, that's the stuff that's going on rather than pausing and going to what you said, Jody, which is being intentional. We're going to go, here's what we're doing, who is the audience, and having those conversations. And I feel like the flip side of that is on the more like aggressive side, people are just wanting ideas. It's like they just crave these ideas, but there's no context to them. There's no context, there's no foundation. And that's where I think being intentional is so important. Michelle, you talk a lot about crafting these moments, right? I love what you said about the thumbprint. When you think about being intentional, what are some of the things that you think about? What are some of the things that maybe you've done that you feel like are very intentional, that are good examples?
So what I mean about crafting, architecting a moment that's not unforgettable, that's going to stay with them for a while. That's, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel like we this experience was created for me. In this day, as an example, is in this day today, social media is huge. Being on social media as your community expert, within your industry is like what you want to achieve. Last year at our Tier 1 event, we hosted about 11 education sessions throughout this 3-day period. One of my sessions was basically I brought in a social media expert, nothing to do with dental at all, but she was an influencer within the social media industry. She taught small businesses how to basically grow their business and grow within their community. Now, when I first presented this to the team, it was like, well, what products is that associated with? I'm like, it's really associated with no product. It's associated with the fact that we want one of the things that we achieve to show our customers is that we truly care about their success in the dental lab industry. And so how to be successful in this dental lab industry, you need to be on social media. You need to be representative. You need to know what to do, what not to do, what content to put up, when to put it up, what to say, what hashtags, and we're not experts in that part, but so I brought in an expert completely out of the industry to basically teach them and guide them. That session was completely full. People were taking pictures the whole time. Not one, I think maybe 2 people left because I like to watch the crowd to see how many people start and how many people end my session, to see really, did it hit the mark? Yeah. And I truly felt like it really brought value that Argen cares about their customer because they're providing an experience that's going to basically help them grow that really you don't benefit at all in if you look at, the product side. So that's one way I personalized, created a moment. Going forward for next year, we're curating special different activations for our lab technicians where they're really truly going to get to learn something part of their trade because that's what they go to the shows for. They go to network, they go to learn, and they go to see new products. And so, me knowing that, I've also had the opportunity to actually go into the field with my sales reps and truly get to ask some of my customers, really what they look into, what makes you stop at a booth, what makes you walk into that space. Yeah. And really, especially if you don't really know that brand. We're very fortunate. A lot of people know who we are. So people are going to come to our booth, but how do we get them to stay longer? That's what I'm working on now is they're going to come anyway because they're going to come to see what we're up to. But how do I get them to really come and engage with us?
I think from a booth perspective, I've said this before to people, you have to fight to stand out. You absolutely do. So that's something that like definitely matters, standing out, whether it's looking like you're having fun, running an engagement, a theme on the booth. I mean, you can go on and on. There's a million different ways to do it. But the minute you look like that boring, corporate, poorly staffed, dull booth, I just think you're kind of dead in the water unless you're just a great brand that has people running over to them. But you have to try to create some excitement and stand out because typically you are in a room full of competitors.
When I talk about intention, we had an opportunity at one of our tier 1 shows last year where we needed to educate. We found the shows prior. People just didn't know about all the different things that we did. And so not even realizing that we have kind of an oncology arm. And so we created a video game that utilized our vehicles as kind of images as the race cars, right? Because we take tests from labs or from providers to labs. So we used the vehicles, branded them, and then we had knowledge questions that would pop up to help them learn more about the company to see how well they did. So what it ended up doing is A, it taught them something. B, we were able to identify where the gaps were in understanding so we can improve on it the next year. We were able to curate information that we knew that they didn't understand so that we could send out follow-up emails and intentionally send them case studies and different articles that made sense to what they may not have learned while they were playing the video game. They were competing against each other. And then they were posting it on their socials. So it helped draw other people. They would bring friends around and other colleagues to compete against each other and to play. So when we were able to create also that wait line, this is when the sales teams could really engage with them and help understand a little bit more about them, tell a little bit more about the company. And then as we would watch the questions get answered incorrectly, we could then have follow-up conversations right there in the booth. So it was really intentionally designed to hit all the objectives that we needed to do for that particular show. It was really effective.
Gamifying things when you can do it the right way is very fun. I really do like that. All right, we're coming up on 10 minutes here. If anybody has any questions, throw them in the Q&A. You can throw them in the chat. We'll find them. We'll get the questions answered as we wind down here. But Jody, Michelle, if you were like mentoring an event marketer working at a company and their CMO or their VP of marketing or whichever stakeholder wants what they want that's coming to them for it, said, hey, I feel like we need to be more intentional and we need to personalize our engagements, activations, our events, our trade shows, whichever of the platter there. What would be some advice that you would give as far as like a starting point for that person?
So I would say to start small. Personalization doesn't start with tech. It starts with questions. It starts really truly understanding, your audience. One thing our company has done is I'm actually invited certain people within our industry to come and join like a group, and where we would, every quarter we would come and they would come together and we would ask them questions regarding, certain different products or different solutions or challenges. And that really helped us learn, what our target audience wanted, what they're wanting, yearning for. But yeah, to start small. And then once you start with that one item, to make sure you measure it and track it to see if it was successful. And if that's successful, then build off that. Don't start with so many ideas that it becomes overwhelming and then you basically, lose sight of what you're really trying to accomplish. And to not, to stop looking at always the logistics, but to pause and to really be empathetic and really truly put yourself in that person's shoes and to really understand what they really want when they attend the event, and to not always think of selling, but how we can solve solutions for them.
I love that part about not always selling, because I think that's what a lot of people go to events and shows to do, is they do go there to sell. And I've always made the statement saying, like, everyone gets it. Like, they know, like everyone knows that they're trying to be sold to a degree. So you can either choose to drive them value, solve their problems, and deliver them an experience, or you can choose to try and sell them. Jody, what about you? What would you let them know?
Yeah, same. It's starting small. Don't feel like you have to just go all out the first time, because you do want to make sure that you're doing it right, but just get started. Take the opportunity now for those events or those shows that you're going to now and start thinking about how you can start to get more research from your attendees, whether you are tapping into, AI, or whether you're actually having good conversations. Like, what better way to build a relationship but to have those conversations with the people at the event or are already coming into your trade show, and find those ways to have those good prompting questions to help train your sales staff and start building those attributes of your attendees for each of those different shows that you attend or each of your different business units. Start now. Just start gathering it, find a way to curate it and keep it in a database, so to speak, so that as you start to build on those events that are repetitive year over year, or if you're seeing that similar audience twice a year, you can then start to take the information that you've learned, both anecdotally and if you're lucky enough to have tech and data to be able to capture it that way, and start applying that to some small personalization moments that will, to what Michelle said, you can build on and you can measure and make sure that it's the right direction that you're going. AI is great, but you still have to give it a gut check. You still have to review it and make sure it's understanding completely what your intention was when you ask the prompt, and use your instincts that you have to make sure that the information even sounds legitimate, and then bounce it up against people that are part of your audience. It can be anecdotally, you can create a survey, but start collecting the data now so that you're prepared to move forward with it as fast as pace as this is coming down the path.
Do either of you have any tools or workflows or processes that kind of you've installed into what you do that like might be helpful for people when they're trying to make sure that they can personalize the event, make it intentional with kind of out sacrificing quality? Anything you're using or any of your own processes that maybe have worked?
Well, we started like after actually attending your event and curating like that. We went over the playbook and what you should be doing. I incorporated that in our cheerleader training.
That's great.
And we built that whole grid and the questions that I asked them. And at first I feel like they took it as like, well, you should kind of know this answer for some of the, but I'm like, but it's all different perspectives. It's like what the BDev, department feels and what the sales department feels and really what's our role within the industry and how do we perceive the industry and what do we want, but then I turned it on as like, okay, now let's focus on the target audience. Now, who are they? And we really dialed in on who that person was, what the pain points were, what was missing that we could provide to them. And having this insight from from all different departments, it was so helpful for me because it made my job so much easier that I wasn't assuming that I knew already because I already had the answers from the people that it mattered and what they felt success looked like to them. And so when I know what my stakeholders, what they success looks like to them and what the challenges that my audience faces, then it just really helps me design it's easier to just tell the story.
You're probably driving a great conversation that maybe initially they're like, well, hey, Michelle, you should know this stuff. But then once they get into the conversation, they're like, well, wait a minute, do we know this stuff? Does everyone know this stuff? So Cody's going to love that you're using that playbook that we create. She's going to love that. But the fact that is designed around how to elevate the conversation with the stakeholders around you. And I love hearing it because to me, that is the conversation that I want event marketers to take it to everybody else, right? Because I think when you bring that conversation there, and I love that you did it because initially they're like, Michelle, you should know this, right? But after doing that exercise and after running through it, I'll bet they realize they start viewing you differently. They're thinking oh, wow, she's not messing around. She's trying to drive results. She's, people in sales and marketing are like, damn, she's really a part of this ecosystem for leads, pipeline, closing deals. And I think it just elevates the status of the role in events, which is going to happen anyway, but it's just a matter of how fast you can do it inside of your own organization. And Cody's putting the framework in the chat, I think, in case anybody wants it. Yeah.
Super easy because it's not easy to try to get these answers. You ask them, why are we there? And you get one set of answers, but you start using different types of prompts, like what does success look like to you? And what is it you want them to take away? It starts to change the conversation.
Specific.
You can't just ask for goals. That's not getting the right response from your stakeholders anymore. You really have to ask it differently. What is
the outcome you want? I've just always said, I think a great way to frame the conversation if I was talking to an executive, I would be saying, hey, we're spending a lot of money, we're spending a lot of time, we're burning a lot of resources. They understand those three things for sure. So we're doing all this. What outcomes do we want? Right? Because if it was light, if it wasn't a heavy resource, heavy spend, heavy time thing, I don't want to say who cares, but it's just less relevant. It's less important. But what are these outcomes that we want? What are the outcomes we need? I think it changes things.
Don't stand for just, lead gen. Well, we want leads.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not just vague. How many leads. Who do you want them from? Who exactly is your audience that you're trying, and how do we get to them and get them to the booth? So it's not stopping at that first initial, it's lead gen. Of course it's lead gen. It's lead gen, thought leadership, or brand awareness. Duh, we know that. But tell us a little bit more about what is it about the brand you want them to know? What are those value props that you want to make sure that we communicate and tell that right story? And then you can build from there.
We've gotten in, I love you saying that, Jody, because we've gotten into some really cool conversations with our clients. And when we push this conversation, we get a similar pushback sometimes, particularly with people that don't know us, that aren't a client, that are prospect. They're like, well, why do you need to know that? Right? Like they push back. But what's interesting is once you do kind of like finesse in and ask and you get going, it's amazing the level of depth of detail sometimes the right person can give you. When they're like, yes, like, your point, they're going beyond the lead. They're saying, well, sometimes it kind of looks like this is kind of the person and this is what we're doing with them. And we're actually trying to sell them into a different vertical. And like, that's kind of the goal at this show. And you're like, okay, so it's not just, that's a lead, right? I got it. But like, I need specifics so that we can set this thing up so that it does work. And I think I think more event marketers need that confidence, which is difficult. I don't want to make it sound like it's simple, but it works. It does work. It's just a matter of inside your organization, how you get there. I guess.
Yeah, no, it's not easy when you're trying to do try a new process out in your planning process. And I definitely didn't make enough space on my PowerPoint for all the information that I received. It was like that session was like fully like went to the time, and it was like so much information had been put on the screen within each grid, and it was just amazing to see like different perspectives and the gaps that maybe we're missing out on and how we can fill those gaps. And like without truly doing that that exercise, I wouldn't have known that. And I feel like it's true, Matt, what you had said. I'm sure like later that day it sparked ideas in other departments had like, well, I didn't know so-and-so felt like that. Or I didn't think about that challenge or thing that we were missing out on. And then hopefully they looked at it within their department, how they can do things differently as well.
It's kind of, you find some misalignments. I've been on a lot of calls over a duration here. And one thing I will say is often whoever the sales leader is, whoever the person is that is kind of driving the bus, it's typically some kind of VP of sales or somebody. They are a great person to get. If you have the right person, when they start understanding these questions because they know the goals and the outcomes that are trying to happen, they get that end result. And that person can typically really help fill the gaps on those conversations where there's confusion to give you very direct, no, this is exactly what we're trying to do if we're talking sales, which I love. You just got to get to that person. We're at time. This flew by. It doesn't feel like 2:00, but it's 2:02. Michelle and Jody, thank you both so much for doing this. You guys gave great answers, a lot of depth, a lot of detail. Love talking to you both. Everyone that showed up, thank you as always. Yeah, I mean, we held north of 35 people here for quite some time, which is fantastic. So
thank you, Ethan and Cody, for putting our LinkedIn in there. So feel free to reach out and just reference that you were here at the show to listen in, because otherwise I might skim over your LinkedIn message, because you can imagine how many vendors kind of pop in there. But if you're looking for some deeper information or just to chat, I'd love to connect.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for Michelle, Jody. You guys were fantastic. Great seeing you both. Thanks for everybody that showed up today. We'll catch y'all next time. Appreciate it. Adios.